Thank you. So I've traveled from Silicon Valley. I can definitely smell the whiff of entrepreneurship at probably the most premier hub of cybersecurity related innovation. It was a 14-hour flight, 10-hour difference, so I landed precisely at the same hour of the day that I started. It was perfect. But most of all, I'm delighted to be here in the company of superheroes, the defenders of the cyber world, the guys and gals that fight the good fight. And it must be noted that you fight it against some overwhelming odds. The kind of odds that you face if you have to take a tiny grain of sand and hurl it and strike a golf ball 50 miles away. Let's take an example of a mission that faces such odds and see if we can draw some inspiration from it. In 2006, ladies and gents, NASA, after a bunch of delays, launched a mission called New Horizons. The objective of the mission was to explore the outer edges of our planetary system, the Kuiper Belt, Pluto. It would take a piano-sized aircraft, roughly 1,000 pounds, to take a payload of scientific equipment and travel 3.6 billion miles to accomplish that mission. Now, timing was of essence. Why? Because you had to catch Pluto when it was closest to the sun. Pluto takes 283 years to go around the sun. So it was literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And in order for this mission to work, while the stars didn't have to align, but the planets certainly had to. Why? Because we were going to use Jupiter and its gravitational pull to slingshot the aircraft to the destination to get it there in time. The power budget for the aircraft onboard power system was 245 watts. That's 3 light bulbs. Just put that in perspective. There were a lot of setbacks along the way. One heart-wrenching one, 9 years and a few months into the journey, where right at the footsteps of the planet Pluto, the aircraft went radio silent. But through deft risk mitigation, 9.5 years later, within a precision of 72 seconds of the originally planned schedule, the mission was attained, the mission was accomplished. Now, how on earth could they tame the odds of literally taking a grain of sand, hurling it across 50 miles, and hitting a golf ball? Let's see if we can analyze that situation and learn something from it in the context of cybersecurity. But before I do that, let me take a few moments to introduce RSA. RSA you might know as the company that throws this big party called the RSA Conference for the good folks. Or you might know us for our cryptography background, or you might know us for the tokens. The new RSA now is part of Dell Technologies, the world's largest privately controlled technology company. At the new RSA, we are also working on a very simple insight, a very simple idea that I wanted to share with you that might help us balance the force, might give us defenders a shot, a fighting chance, a shot, a sliver of a shot. We call this idea business-driven security. And I wanted to take a moment in the limited time we have to share this one big idea with you and a few small ones perhaps. I hope you find these ideas useful as you craft the cybersecurity strategy for your companies and your organizations. Now, in addition to being useful, I also wanted to be different. So I used not a disaster scenario in my opening story, which is often done too often in cybersecurity conferences. We have resorted to fear-mongering and motivation driven through fear. Now, I call upon you to ponder the ethos of the defender? Is it the manifest destiny of the defender to be defined by the attacker? Is it the defender's destiny to always be doomed to be one step behind, to wield the shield when the sword strikes, to spin up a firewall when the network is under siege? You get the point. What am I saying? What I'm saying is, in the heat of the fight to thwart the attacker, have we actually lost sense of why we were fighting in the first place? Have we lost a sense of our core purpose, our mission, our business? And I use the word business broadly. If you're part of the cybersecurity team for a government, your business is to serve the citizens, is to uphold the values of your country, like democracy. If you're part of a pharmaceutical company, your core purpose might be to accelerate a clinical trial and drive it to success, to create a therapy that can cure cancer and save millions of lives. Maybe that is your core purpose. Throughout centuries, military commanders and thinkers have pondered the notion of what factors come into the motivation and morale in high-stakes combat situations. The kind of situations you, my dear cyber defenders, face every day of your lives. Now, a Greek philosopher in 400 BC termed this the force of the soul. The force of the soul. It is what drives you to accomplish and tame seemingly unsurmountable odds. I ask you, what motivates you? Are you in love with the mission and the business that you're part of? Does it stir your soul? There, love, soul, two words that you probably have not heard in any cybersecurity presentation ever. We have to think about being driven not in response to what the attacker does, but being business driven in our approach to fuel the force of the soul. We have to motivate ourselves differently. We have to take a business driven approach. And that is not just a great motivator, but it's also a phenomenal tool to make us operationally more successful. And I'll tell you how. Now let's first look at the perspective of the business. What are the business guys thinking about? Well, what the business guys are thinking about is changing the world, changing their industry through digital transformation. You've heard that buzzword often. This is about imagining the fourth industrial revolution. This is about imagining new applications that unleash unprecedented productivity. This is about quantum computing. This is about precision medicine. This is about autonomous vehicles. This is about cryptocurrencies. Name the application. Certainly a worthwhile and inspiring mission. That's what the business guys are dreaming about. Now, if you think about what that drives, this transformation is driving a fundamental re-architecture from a technology and IT perspective. IoT, mobile, cloud. The perimeter has all but disappeared. It is also driving a fundamental change in the workplace. People want anywhere, anytime, access to information. Every facet of our life is now digital and therefore vulnerable. And finally, the business thinkers, the business teams obsess about managing risk. And I was delighted to see the notion of risk management in all of the public sector presentations that we saw earlier. That's what the business guys care about, managing risk to tide through this period of change, this period of disruption. Now, the regulators have also decided to help and come in and step to the fore and create policies that protect the consumer, the civic and legal considerations as this change washes over us. In the US alone, the the regulations since 2008, the 25,000 plus regulations in 2008 are tantamount to 11% of GDP spend to take care of those regulations. If that were a country, that would be the 10th largest economy in the world, just to put matters in perspective. We heard the speakers from Israel here as well as UK about how the silos are being busted in those organizations. The specter of GDPR in UK looms large, in the EU looms large, and the board of directors are worried about what that means in terms of cybersecurity considerations. That's what the business guys are thinking about. Now let's switch perspectives in terms of what the defenders, the defender persona, what are they thinking about? First off, they're just worried about keeping up with the attacker. We've always talked about this asymmetrical advantage that the attacker has. They have to be right once. Their ROI is instantaneous and continuous when the attack transpires. Whereas you, the defender, have to prove the negative, that you've actually prevented an attack, which is basically somewhere in between hard and impossible to do. In addition, the fight against the attacker is against a sophisticated adversary that has all the same technology as you do. Not just that, they're great at collaborating and sharing that technology, so that advantage is not to be had either. Just keeping up is a phenomenal challenge for the defender. And if you think about it, when the odds are tremendous, what do you have to do? When you live in an industry that has the highest negative unemployment rate, when you don't have enough good guys to fight the good fight on your behalf, what do? Well, when you don't have enough human intelligence on your payroll, you have to recruit machines, AI and automation. Or you have to recruit from the ecosystem. You have to outsource, you have to harness the power of the ecosystem. Second, the defenders worry about this new architecture that is being stood up. Now, the right way to think about that architecture is that fundamentally, you should rethink security for that architecture. You should demand of the infrastructure providers to design security in. That's the way to think about it. As an example, if you're standing up a software-defined network, that software-defined network better have micro-segmentation capability to create security enclaves of the application that gets provisioned. And oh, by the way, this software-defined network should have the intelligence to reconfigure policy as the application floats around on premises or in the cloud. Security needs to be instrumented in the modern new infrastructure. You have to build the home alarm in as you construct your new home. That's what you need to demand out of the infrastructure providers to secure the new infrastructure. And you certainly have to meet the new expectations of the modern user who do not want any friction. So therefore, your security posture has to step up or down in response to the risk of the situation. So every posture around security needs to be informed with the notion of risk management. And finally, like I said, it's all about enabling the business. Security, cybersecurity is squarely a business problem. It is the domain and the consideration and a hot topic in boards of directors. At the RSA conference, we saw a 400% increase in the attendees that were boards of directors wanting to learn more about security considerations and what it means for the business. It is clearly a business topic. Now, there is motivation on part of the business teams as well as the security operations teams to get on the same page. Now, that is harder than it seems. And why is that? Because fundamentally, they worry about different things, they focus on different things, and they use different languages. The business teams want to know when a vulnerability occurs or a security incident occurs. They want to know what happened, how bad is it, what it means for my business in terms of my reputation, my customers, my P&L, my intellectual property. They do not care if the attack was perpetrated because of a vulnerability due to cross-site scripting or SQL injection. Pick the technology buzzword of your choice. These two teams, despite best intentions, find it hard to communicate, to be on the same page. Now let's go back to our example from the beginning, the New Horizons mission. How were they able to tame the odds of a journey over 3.6 billion miles, which was fraught with all kinds of risk? Well, what they did was, as they had to make hard business decisions about how to use that power budget of 245 watts to either navigate the aircraft or do processing or do image capture or do transmission, those business decisions were done at the back of advice from the technical teams. The technical operational teams were able to translate incident risk to business risk so that the business teams could make the right decision. And then the business teams orchestrated the technology teams to focus on the right problems at hand every mile along the way to the 3.6 billion miles. It is all about robust risk management. It's about taming what at RSA we call the gap of grief. The gap between the business teams and the security operations teams. There is magic if you tame the gap of grief, and there is potential disaster if you do not. But again, I took the resolve of not motivating by fear, so I will not cite such disastrous situations, but there are plenty to go around. So ladies and gents, we have been in the security industry that has gone through several phases. We started with centralized computing, a small perimeter, fewer humans, and we took the moats and castles model of building protection, whereby you took defenses around the perimeter, initially signature-based, and then over time rules-based and anomalous behavior-based. Then we realized that the bad guys were actually already inside. The perimeter model wasn't cutting it. So we shifted to the paradigm of detection and response. The bad guys are already inside. Let's find them and get them before they get to the good stuff, before they get to the prize. And then we realized, as the architecture changed, as client server happened, as more and more users got connected, as things got connected, it became overwhelming. You didn't have enough good guys to detect and respond. Then the mindset shifted towards automation, artificial intelligence. And as I said before, all of these things are not advantageous to the good guys, because the bad guys have all of these advantages as well. So there is but one asymmetric advantage that we, the good guys, can wield. That one asymmetric advantage that can give us that little bit of an edge is our knowledge and our understanding of our business context. Nobody knows our business better than we do. The timing of our business events, how our business is organized, what's a higher priority today compared to yesterday. We know that. The adversary does not. So this notion of business-driven security is the idea and the simple insight of bringing to bear the one singular asymmetric advantage that we can apply to the context of securing our world. It is the confluence, it is the merger of security technology with robust business risk management. We call that business-driven security. So that was the big idea I wanted to share with you. I wanted to take a moment to recap the key takeaways of some of the ideas that I communicated. First, as you think about building this new glorious digital world with transformed IT and transformed technology, demand that security be designed in as a consideration at the right abstraction layers in that technology stack. Two, think about recruiting machines on your team. But remember, be cognizant that the bad guys have been recruiting machines for more than a decade. It's not the advantage that tips the battle over. Furthermore, train the machines just like you train the humans, because machines learn through patterns, and the adversary is great at disrupting the pattern. Supervised machine learning is what is needed. Train the machines as you recruit them. I already talked about the one asymmetric advantage you can bring to bear: business-driven security. That's the one advantage you can bring to bear. You take one thing away from this presentation, take that one. And finally, I implore you to not just worry about the technology of cybersecurity, worry about the psychology of cybersecurity. Think about that Greek philosopher and what drives motivation. Think of security as a risk management problem. Our mission, our definition of success is not to create the unhackable world. It is to create a safer world. Back to what Ian Levy said earlier, it is about harm reduction. You have to redefine success, because success is the motivator. Nobody wants to work on a mission where you constantly feel you're failing. You have to redefine success, think of security as a risk domain, and apply robust risk management technologies. And finally, remember why we fight in the first place. Fall in love with the mission, with the business of your organization. Ladies and gents, may the force of the soul be with you. Thank you.